Ladies and gentlemen, this is an article that's an op-ed. So it is from a white woman and her perspective on reparations. And this is from Truth Out. Now, some things in here I agree with her, and there's other things I don't agree at all. So, nevertheless, let's get into this article. So, reparations to Black Americans should be made now. Here's how to start. In a 2016 poll, 58% of African Americans said they believe that the United States should pay financial reparations to African Americans who are descendants of slaves. Only 15% of whites agreed. I am a white woman and I support reparations to African Americans. I have published academic articles on the issue, including official apologies. I am an author of Reparations to Africa and a co-editor of The Age of Apology. In 2005, the United Nations issued a short document which outlined the basic guidelines on the right to a remedy and reparations for victims of gross violations of human rights laws. Now, some of you might remember, I believe it was I think it might have been 2012. The United Nations actually made a trip to America and went to a couple of cities and went to the Black communities and talked to the people about racism, discrimination, and reparations. So, and I believe Baltimore was one of those places where they stopped and actually went into the Black community and spoke to them. And the United Nations had then, I believe it was 2012, I may have to go back and look, made a recommendation for reparations for the Black community. You know, that's all they can do is give a recommendation. It didn't go any further than that. So, financial compensation is one aspect of reparations mentioned in this article, but it is not the only one. Apology is important. So is commemoration and tributes to victims and an accurate account of the violations. 5 years ago, author and journalist Ta-Nehisi Coates wrote a harrowing account of injustices to African Americans in an article for The Atlantic. These injustices occurred during the period of enslavement, but also the Jim Crow era, the Civil Rights era, and down to the present. In his article, Coates called upon all Americans to acknowledge their shameful history, including injustices of slavery, terrorism, plunder, and piracy committed against African Americans. He wants all the facts to be accurately reported. Accurate acknowledgement would be a first step in reparations. An apology is a second step. Apologies. So many governments, institutions, and private businesses in the United States are implicated in slavery and post 1865 injustices that it would be impossible for them all to apologize at once. But a good start would be an apology for slavery by the President of the United States, joined by governors of every state that ever permitted enslavement. The text of the apology would have to be carefully negotiated with African Americans community leaders. Apologies would also have to be carefully surrounded by ritual so that its sincerity and seriousness would be apparent. Okay, this could be followed by literally thousands of apologies by lower level municipal governments, religious institutions, and businesses. Every single institution would have to investigate its history and acknowledge and apologize for every single act of enslavement and discrimination against African Americans. Memorials. The next step would be to memorialize all of these injustices. It is not enough to tear down monuments of leaders of the Confederate Army. Memorials should be put up at public expense to African Americans who fought against enslavement and later injustices. Memorials should be erected at sites of plantations, sites of protest, and sites of known murders of African Americans, from those who were lynched in decades past to those unjustly killed by police. These memorials are a way to assert that Black Lives Matter. But you know what? If you put all those memorials up of us that were killed all over America, you wouldn't be able to walk around in America. That's how many deaths there were. Financial reparations. Finally, there is the question of financial reparations and whether descendants of enslaved people should receive them. How, if at all, can all the descendants of enslaved African Americans be identified? That's bullshit. They have records of all of us here. Birth records. They have your school records. They have your banking information. The IRS knows where the hell you are. They got all of our information. So now when it comes down to reparations, you don't know where we are? How come you know where we are in all these other instances, but when it comes down to reparations, you don't know where we are? Yeah, that's really convenient, isn't it? Okay. So, just find that funny. We don't know where you are. And let me owe your government. I bet you will know where I am then, won't you? Even if they can be identified, should they receive individual financial reparations? Perhaps yes, to compensate for the huge gap in mostly inherited wealth between white and Black Americans. Perhaps African Americans should be given a financial boost to help them on the road to moderate middle class security. But many whites and other Americans might view this as unfair to other people who don't enjoy such prosperities. It wouldn't be unfair. You've been enjoying prosperity for hundreds of years. Okay. Now, what she is also saying is she thinks that federal and state government should also pay reparations to African Americans. One possibility is to invest in education. I don't want to invest in education. Okay, we spent K through 12 in these schools just to be lied to. We didn't get enough sufficient education to really be, where we should be. They gave us bare minimum so you could get out and just be a worker. That's really all they did. And they didn't even give us good education, and most of it were lies. We just spent K through 12 and got lied to. This is why you're hearing a lot of people say they got more education being on the internet than they did K through 12. And it's the truth. That was on purpose. They don't want you to be smart. They want you to be stupid up in this society. Stupid people are easy to control. See, once you can think for yourself and you're smart, they can't control you. That's why you notice they always got an issue with the people they can't control. See, as long as you're stupid and you're still listening to them, you're not a problem. But as soon as you start having a mind of your own and thinking for yourself and not paying attention to a lot of things that they're saying to you, they don't like you. They have an issue with anybody they can't control. All right. Back to this. All right, so one might argue that affirmative action programs have already accomplished this. Trust me, they didn't. But they have been weakened over decades and in any case only apply at the university level. Another option is housing investment in predominantly African American residential areas, especially where public housing projects are located. For decades, African Americans have been subjected to low quality public housing and mortgage discrimination. Yet another option is investment in African American health care, although one could argue that the whole country deserves this kind of investment. Nonetheless, if African Americans suffer from some health problems at greater rates than white Americans, then reparations could include enhanced health care. Many whites and other Americans may oppose reparations to African Americans on grounds that neither they nor their ancestors had anything to do with ways African Americans were and are oppressed. That's a lie. And let me just tell you this, and I know this because I did my family tree. Damn near all of these white people in America are connected to a slave owner. Now, they're not going to admit it to you because they think that you're so stupid that you don't know these things. If you just go, you don't even really need to talk to them at all. There are all kinds of registries of slave owners and the U.S. Census. If you go to the U.S. Census, it gives you the list of slave owners and how many slaves they had. They did a separate count for the slaves. So you can find out real easy. Why do you think it was easy for them to get the information on Mitch McConnell and Beto O'Rourke? It's that easy. You could find this information on these folks in a snap. It really don't take that much effort. Now, when they come and tell you their families didn't have nothing, they're lying to you. Just know that. They are lying to you. They're lying. They're just banking on the fact that you don't know history and you have not looked into these things like the census and you don't know. But every last one of them that are sitting in your face saying this stuff, they're all lying to you. All of them got some kind of ties to a slave owner. They all do. Especially the ones that are in your face saying they had nothing to do with it. Those are the biggest culprits with slave owners and their families. I'm just telling you. But as citizens, whether of the U.S. or, in my case, Canada, we have a responsibility to make amends to fellow citizens who have been harmed by the past or present policies of our governments. Acknowledgement is a first step forward. Apologies, memorials, and financial reparations continue the process. Reparations are a way of making the country whole by partially remedying and inherited inequalities that still plague African Americans. They are a way of saying that African Americans are at last equal citizens of the United States of America, therefore deserving all of its privileges and protections. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the opinion of a white woman that did this op-ed. It's always interesting looking at these. I even look at the ones where they oppose reparations. And the thing is, when you read the ones that oppose, I always get a chuckle out of them because they be lying their asses off and they think, we don't know history well enough to know that they're not telling the truth. I think they just really believe that some of us, we just don't know. And we do know. That's the thing. We do know. Now, they're not going to tell you. I don't expect them to tell you. Just like they're not going to tell you slave owners are in their families. I don't expect them to tell you. But I am telling you, all you got to do is there's plenty of documentation out here for you to find out. And it's not hard to find out. But please tell me what you think, ladies and gentlemen. Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell. And I'll see you on the next video. Peace, family.